And when we learned, when we were interviewing somebody, to look at, does their personality profile fit the job and the team? Okay, are they hungry, humble, smart? Do they want to get ahead? All right, and do they have that ability to take on leadership at their level and start bringing it through the entire organization? That was like rocket fuel. We grew 400% in less than 2 years when we had everything dialed in. I mean, hold on tight.
Hey guys, Damien Stevens, host of MSP Mindset. Today I got to interview Dave Cava and Shawn Walsh. They built their MSPs respectively, one of them to 8 figures, the other one in 8 months built $1 million revenue. Now, you think maybe this has nothing to do with you, they're just superstars. Guess what? They lost $1 million client. Another one of them lost 50% of their team in a single month. If you want to know the hard struggles of building an MSP and what they did to build it back, don't miss this episode and don't miss the authors of the Pumpkin Plan for Managed Service Providers. So I wanted to start with the seed of the Pumpkin Plan, pardon the pun there. But before we even get to the book, tell me about how you guys came to know each other.
Oh boy,
Dave! This is your story.
Okay, I'm happy to tell it. So, before I started my MSP, I worked for another company that was more project based. They did cable designs and relocation services for mid-sized financial companies in Manhattan. And after 9/11, they decided that they would start what they called a VCIO group. Basically a small business support group. All their project work had dried up, due to what was going on in New York City at that time. And they hired me, and after 6 months, they said, "We think you're the right guy to run this group." And it was really struggling. They had 4 clients that were all ready to fire them. And long story short, I wound up getting it on track. There was about 30 clients when I left there. It was about half the company's revenue, but the company was falling apart. It wasn't doing well. So I left there with my boss, basically said, "I'm going to go start a company. I think we work really well together. I'd love to keep working with you. I'm going either way." My boss and I left and started this MSP. And I had decided I want to learn everything I can from other people. I don't know a lot about this industry. Whatever I can learn the easy way, I want to learn the easy way.
About what time frame was this? About what year?
This was 2007.
Okay, gotcha.
So one of the things I did, I talked to people. We decided we were going to go with ConnectWise and Kaseya, and I started going to the ConnectWise user group. The first user group ConnectWise did was up in New England. And Shawn was an integral part of it. And I said a prayer. I said, "Oh, God, help me to get to know somebody that can help me find my way in this industry." Mm-hmm. And I wound up sitting across Shawn from dinner. And he was quick to share and very knowledgeable. And he'd been in business a long time by then. And I just said, "Wow, this is really a guy I could latch onto." And so when the next meeting rolled around, I called him and said, "Hey, ConnectWise isn't doing dinner the night before. Would you like to get together for dinner?" And he said, "Well, I don't know if I'm available. I'm already having dinner with some other MSP owners." And, and by nature, I blush when my wife says no cheese on a hamburger, I'm not a pushy guy. I like to accommodate everybody. But when it came to business, I learned that you got to set that aside. And when it's time to work a room, you put your big boy pants on and you go work the room. So I just said to Shawn, "It's okay. I'll just tag along. I'm sure it'll be fine." and he's like, "I don't know. Let me make a couple phone calls and see if this is going to be okay." So after a little while, I had a sort of kind of invite to this dinner, and I went, and it was a bunch of other guys that have gone on to do really great things in the industry. Brett Jaffe was there. MJ Shore was there. A couple other guys that went on to have great MSPs and successful exits were there. And I just tried to keep my mouth shut, ask a lot of questions and listen. And I caught the server over at the bar towards the end of the night. We had steak and lobster. It was a really nice dinner. And I gave her my credit card. I said, I don't want these guys to see a bill. And it was almost like I had scripted it. It couldn't have gone any better because they started getting annoyed. And eventually they called the server over and said, hey, we've been sitting here for a half hour. Can we get our check? And she said, oh, it's been taken care of. And they said, what do you mean it's been taken care of? And pointed right at me and said, that guy paid it right there. And MJ said, what the hell did you do that for? And I just said, guys, it's been really humbling being around people that have been in this business and been so successful. And thank you for having me. And I learned more tonight than I did in the last year of trying to figure this business out. And that's how Shawn and I met. And eventually we wound up facilitating that New England ConnectWise user group together. And our friendship grew over the years, and we were in a lot of peer groups together, kind of encouraging each other, competing against each other, always trying to top each other, what was going on in our business.
And being there for each other when things didn't go the way we planned.
Yeah.
That happened too? Yeah. That's interesting. I thought that was just me. Have you ever wondered if you could recover your backups? Let me ask a better question. Have you ever had a backup fail to recover? Have you ever lost data? Yeah, that's me. Here's what's crazy. 58% of recoveries fail to recover. So if you think it's just you couldn't be more wrong. What are we going to do about that? Well, you've got two options. Enter Servosity. What we do, what we exist to do, is test your backups and manage them for you. We test every volume, every single day. We do weekly testing, monthly testing, and quarterly testing. And you can hand off the drudgery and babysitting of backups and the day-to-day management to our team that monitors your backups for you. It's time to level up your backup game. One way you can do that is visit servosity.com/learn more if you'd like to take the process that I've spent the last 18 years building and steal it and apply it to your MSP so that you can level up your backup game. Check out the link below in the description or visit servosity.com/learn more. I know this is kind of talked about in the book, The Pumpkin Plan, but what was some of the struggles that created the environment where you guys said, hey, I'm going to go write a book. And I want you to be crazy enough to write it with me. And how did that happen? Right? That's not the normal MSP path in any shape.
No, in my particular case, it was really about a journey of self-development and self-reflection, and learning how to, take those parts of your personality that both have that dark side and that good side, and figuring out how to leverage the good side without, letting the bad side come into play. And as I wrote in the book, in the early. And well, to back up a second, I came out of a law enforcement career, so it was very, very black and white. It was, when I tell you to do something, you do it, you don't question it, and very authoritarian type of style. And I came into business, and that just came with me because that's what I had been around my whole life. And
for everybody's benefit, Shawn, what was it? What was your role there in law enforcement?
I was a detective sergeant. I was the head of the detective bureau. So I worked undercover narcotics for a couple of years. I was in charge of juvenile before that. I did sex crimes against children. So I had a pretty broad career. Most of it investigative, and most of it dealing with some fairly negative things, which kind of affects the way you perceive everything down the road. And it takes a while before you realize that, the experience that I had in law enforcement is not what the rest of the world is really all about. But that transition took time, and it was painful, because in business, what was happening is, I was coming in with this my way or the highway, do it my way, positive reinforcement was not part of the mix. And I couldn't understand why we were having turnover, people were leaving, there was conflict. And one day, my COO came in, he said, I'm quitting. I said, what do you mean? He's like, you're always mad. You're always yelling. He said, I can't take it anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? And the problem was I really had no self-awareness of what I was doing and the effect that I was having on other people. And he completely blindsided me with this. And so he wound up leaving. And of course, at that, my initial reaction was, well, okay, the heck with you. I'm
Right.
moving on. You're just being disloyal. And then the cycle continued. And then one day I was given a disc profile, and I'm reading the disc profile. And I'm going, ooh, holy cow. And I showed it to my wife, and she said, you do realize that everybody here is scared to death of you, right? I said, me? I'm a teddy bear. What are you talking about? And, I started looking at that, and I just had to start doing some really serious looking in the mirror and reflection and deciding, what do I want? And what do I want to be? And what do I want to be to other people? And so, I had to make some serious changes in the way I managed and really worked on, bringing up the EQ and just learning how to, listen to other people and put them first. And that shifted my entire perspective on leadership, and it changed the style in which I led completely. And finally, after about 3 years, I went back to my former COO and I said, hey, Tom, I said, we need you back. Things have changed. I've changed. We're working on this. And he wasn't sure at first, so he took my engineer and my wife, who did the HR, out to lunch away from me and asked them, is it really different? They said, yeah, it really is. And he came back, and the first thing we did was to do a disc and what they call a trimetrics profile, where we do disc driving forces, EQ, and we do it for the entire management team, and we used it at that point throughout the organization on a regular basis. And he came back, and we had a consultant who debriefed everybody with him in the room so that he could understand everybody else's style, mine. And we went through that, and when we walked out of that coaching session, he looked at me and he said, if we had had this 3 years ago, he goes, I never would have had to leave. And so I knew right there, even with your team and yourself, there has to be a constant attitude of self-improvement, and that I want to be better, not just technically better, but better as a team member, better as a leader within the team, better as a resource and as an example to our clients.
I love that.
That was difficult. It was hard, but it's and helping other people understand those things and helping people with those tools to do that self-development is extremely gratifying.
That's quite the personal development story there, Shawn. I love that. I think
It's still a struggle every day.
I was going to say I can relate to that. I can relate to thinking, that I'm just the most relatable and I'm the biggest jerk or something all of a sudden. So how did this tie into you, Dave? How did your arc of development interact with how the heck you came to write this book?
Definitely a different road. But it's interesting, and just listening to Shawn, and now having coached a lot of MSPs and had them in our peer groups, and now both when we were peer group members and now facilitating them, you really see that to the degree an MSP succeeds, it's usually because the owner is doing good things and has sharp things they bring to the table, and to the degree they're stuck or failing, it usually points to the owner too. And that's all well and good until it's your company and you have to face that's true about you, and that was certainly the case for me and my MSP. And I had a terrific partner who was very talented and trustworthy and likable and smart, and I brought a couple of things to the table too, and we got some really neat things done. But to the degree we could have done so much more, it definitely is. Looking at my own flaws and things I've figured out, it's a lot easier when you're looking at someone else's company and saying, well, you need to do this, this, and this. It's much easier to prescribe than to execute. But when it comes to the book, I think the biggest thing is I love to write. I've been writing for a long time. Always thought sooner or later I'd write a book, and Shawn basically brought the idea to the table and said, we both knew Mike Michalowicz a little. Shawn knows him better than I do, and we both had read a bunch of his books. Pumpkin Plan had really played a role in both of our businesses, and he said, we have a chance to write this derivative book specifically for MSPs. And we looked at it. We looked at the licensing fees and the commitment, and I just said, well, if we pay the money, it'll get done, because we're not paying that money and not getting it done. Like it'll force us to do it, and we may just talk about it the rest of our lives and not do it if we don't do that. So I said, it's kind of a funny motivation, but it's basically kicking ourselves in the butt to make sure it happens. We're not going to pay a big old licensing fee and not accomplish it. So that's part of how it came to fruition. As far as what I brought to the table for my MSP, there's some ways in which my MSP was almost like a typical MSP, sped up and concentrated. Like, we were so successful right out of the gate in terms of, we hired 12 people our first year. We did $1 million in revenue our first 8 months, which is not typical for MSPs. And I wanted to be really careful on how I told my story in the book, because that's not something a lot of people are going to be able to relate to. But all the problems that MSPs have in terms of not having good processes, in terms of growing pains, in terms of personnel pains, we had them all. We just had them immediately. And like I said, everything, it was just like if you took the first 5-6 years of a typical MSP and condensed it into 1 year, that's what we experienced. So that's not how I put it in the book, but I talk more about the issues that we had, because people relate to pain. We both had, Shawn and I, a lot of pain in our MSPs, and kind of, if you can show people, hey, I relate to you and the problems that you have, and we were able to work through them, and here's how, maybe people will listen and learn a few things and be able to apply it, because their guard's down and they don't feel like, this is some phony know-it-all coming to them and just saying you should be doing this, and that.
Well, speaking of that, tell me what that first year did to you and your partner and your health.
Oh my gosh. It's still under NDA, so I have to be careful how I talk about it. But when we left that other company, we wound up in a lawsuit. There had been a lot of disingenuous things going on in negotiations, I'll put it that way. And we wound up just leaving with no clients, no money, no anything. We just left. And there was a lot of legal wrangling. It was the most stressful thing I'd been in my life. It was, off the charts, can't sleep at night stress while you're trying to start a business. And eventually we wound up settling that. And basically part of the reason we settled it, we think we could have just won the whole thing, but it was like, you can't start a business and be, worried about a lawsuit and in court all the time, too. So that's how we started. And then we had a large client that came over to us, unbeknownst to us, was about to break off from their corporate parent, which was one of the biggest private equity firms in the country, and basically said, we need to split out files, we need to split out email, we need to set up physical offices, and it all needs to happen as quickly as possible. So that's a lot of what drove our growth. We were doing $100,000 a month in consulting fees, building out offices and breaking apart exchange servers and stuff. So it was May we started the company. It was August, and when my business partner shattered his knee and wound up out of work until December. So he was out from August to December.
Wow.
And then it was February when I was diagnosed with a tumor in my bronchial tube and wound up having to go for a surgery where they removed 2/3 of my right lung, unbeknownst to me. They said, we might have to take a little of your lung. I woke up, they told me what they did, and I said, what? So that put me out of work for a while. I mean, basically, I tell the story, it's like the MSP was trying to kill us. It was the toll on our health was amazing. I mean, we paid the price for sure.
Well, tell me about what happened when the financial crisis hit.
Yeah, so that was 2008 when I had that lung surgery, right? And that was just when things were starting to go bad in terms of the mortgage-backed securities, and a couple of our clients were into that, and we wound up focused on the hedge fund and private equity space, so it really affected our clients directly. We were not really on a managed services model yet, at least not a mature one. We had little recurring elements, but we were still billing a lot of hours. And when the financial crisis hit, our clients started laying people off. They stopped expanding. They stopped opening offices. A lot of hedge funds start up during recessions, but it takes a little while for that to happen. The immediate knee jerk is that everything stops. And basically we lost money 6 months in a row. We'd had this incredible start out at the gate. We'd hired all these people. And then we figured out we were losing money every month. My partner and I stopped paying ourselves. We had to go to our employees who'd been working their butts off for a while and just say, we can't give you raises. We can't give you bonuses. We're just trying not to lay people off. And it was miserable. It did do a couple of good things, right? Because it forces you to run lean. You're not, that's why great businesses are started in recessions, because no one's wasting any money. They're careful about expenses and smart about how we're going to make a profit from the very beginning. The other thing it did was kind of force us to communicate with our staff about the big picture, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the business, which if we hadn't had that hard time, it probably would have been years before we got around to really giving our employees the inside baseball view of what's going on with the business and the company, because we wanted them to understand, no, it's not that you're not doing a good job or that we're sticking all the money in our pockets or that anybody's done anything horribly wrong. We have to stick together here because here's what's going on. And that is something that we kept doing throughout the life of the MSP for the next 10 or 11 years that really put us on a good course in terms of our relationship with our staff.
So life is not a success-only journey, if you're listening, right? Yeah, there's some struggles there. And I want to tie this back into you, Shawn. So you, if I understand, grew your MSP into 4 states. Again, we could talk about all these accolades, and I don't mean to minimize them. You guys were both very successful and built MSPs really quickly. But tell me about what being slow to hire did to your MSP, Shawn.
As I said, my initial struggle was a lot on the leadership side. But when I started really understanding that and I started building the right team, it was really like putting rocket fuel on the business. And getting the right team in the door and getting the right people in the right seats. And as Dave just started to go into, making sure that you share your vision with them and that they understand. It's funny. I often hear people say, hiring millennials or whatever, Gen Z or whatever, they all want to be CEO on day one. And, I stop people now and I cut them off and I say, you know what? they don't want to be CEO on day one. They do want to know what the path to CEO is on day one. And they want to know that there is a path. That's all. And if you share that right up front and go in and say, yes, here's where we're hiring you, but here's the opportunities that you'll have in this company. Here's where we want to go as a company. Here's all the other doors that we expect to open up. Your team will get excited about that. And that's what generations today want and employees want today. I don't care what generation they're from. They want to know that there's a path, there's something to get excited about, that there's a bigger picture. And when you start putting the right people in the seats and sharing that with them and being very much, open book, and knowing how to communicate with one another in that, it's enormous. I tell people there were 3 transitional moments in my company that shifted it. And you could see where we were kind of hovering it, and all of a sudden this came into play and we jumped and we leaped every time one of these 3 things came up. The first was DISC, personality profiling, EQ, understanding how to communicate effectively with one another. That was enormous. That allowed us to hold on to good people and know how to talk to good people and how to get our own points across. So that was a leap. The next thing was bringing in EOS or a similar business framework. And I'm not plugging EOS. It's just having a framework and understanding the value of that framework. And we brought that in, and that was another leap. And then we started to do acquisitions and the company started to grow, and then finally, the last piece of the puzzle was what's called intent-based leadership. And it comes from a book called Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet, who was a commander of a nuclear submarine in the United States Navy. And he took the worst performing ship in the Navy and moved it to the best performing ship in 18 months. And then his second book, I think, is even more important for leaders to read, which is called Leadership as Language. And it talks about how even when we have the basis to be an effective leader, a lot of times the language we use it sabotages our efforts, because we learned how to manage through a playbook that came up through the factory age. And we no longer hire factory workers. We're not putting lug nuts on a Chevy, okay?
That's right.
We're hiring smart people to solve interesting problems, to steal a line from Seth Godin. And when you do that, you have to get out of their way. You have to know how to give them the results and get out of their way. And intent-based leadership is pushing authority down the stack instead of up the stack. So you're actually pushing authority down to the people who are actually in front of the work and doing that. And when we learned how to do that, and when we were interviewing somebody to look, does their personality profile fit the job and the team? Okay. Are they hungry, humble, smart? Do they want to get ahead? All right. And do they have that ability to take on leadership at their level and start bringing it through the entire organization? That was like rocket fuel. We grew 400% in less than 2 years when we had everything dialed in. I mean, hold on tight, because it's the growth at that speed will definitely test everything in your processes, your people, your team, but we did it, and it was when you get all those things dialed in correctly, it's crazy how fast things can take off.
I want to focus on some of the good, but I feel like we're missing some nuggets of the struggles.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about is it true, Shawn, that you had some big percentage of your staff walk out?
Yeah. That was when I was, going through I was being the tyrant. I mean, one of the reasons I basically.
So tell me about that. How much of your staff walked out at once?
It was 3/4 of the staff.
Gosh.
Yeah. I mean, it was technical, so here I am, and, my wife came in the door and she looks at me I'm taking help desk calls. I'm trying to work people through it. She goes, this is like watching an episode of Undercover Boss, where you realize the guy who runs the company has no idea how to do the work anymore. Thanks. But you know what? I mean, I laugh about it now, but I got to tell you, it took me and the company probably a good year and a half to get back on our feet. And, luckily we really didn't take a financial hit, but the stress level and it was by the skin of our teeth. And every day it was, are we still going to be here tomorrow? I mean, for a year, I'm getting up every morning wanting to throw up before I get in the car to drive to the office. And it's all I can do to sit there and just,
I get stressed out just hearing him talk about it. I'm like,
my wife would see me and she'd grab me and say, we're going for a walk. And she'd walk me, around the neighborhood for 2 or 3 miles because she could see that my stress level was about, my head was about to explode. And
she's a keeper there, Shawn. Wow. That's amazing.
You know what? I mean, she was so instrumental in growing this at so many different levels. And, I use her. She actually teaches the personality profiling, as do I. She has an education background. So, but she does a lot of the assessments. But it's funny because we're on opposite ends of the chart. And she's very strong in the areas I'm weak, and I'm very weak in the areas that she's strong. So having her involved in the company, again, really gave us that balance and that yin yang, And
can I cut in for a second?
Absolutely.
This is Damien. This is great. So when Shawn and I first started working together in our current business venture, they came to me, and Stacy, Shawn's wife, said, Dave, you and I have the same exact disc profile, and it's the dead opposite of Shawn. So if Shawn's ever really frustrating you and driving you crazy and you want to kill him or you want to quit, she's like, you come to me and I'll tell you how to deal with it and how to approach him. And I looked at Shawn and I said, is this for real? Like you guys are serious? You want me to, if I have a conflict with my business partner, I'm supposed to go talk to his wife about it? Like, this is cool. And they're both like, yep, it's cool. Like she's like, I can help you. And I'm like, Shawn, you good with that? He's like, I'm good with it. Like the was like, okay,
Wow.
But it hasn't happened yet. It's come close a couple times, but
I think it's a few times she jumped in and volunteered some information.
I haven't broken the glass yet, but it's sooner or later, I'm sure it'll happen, that we haven't made enough money or lost enough money to.
And you know what? And the good thing is, because sometimes, I'll hang up from a call with him. I'm going, I don't understand how he's getting there. She goes, well, let me explain to you why he's thinking that. I'm like, oh, all right.
That's awesome. That is a different level of EQ. You can go to my wife and get things sorted out with me. That's a next level there.
Well, the great thing, the wonderful thing about EQ is even if it's bad, even if your EQ is low, it's very coachable. And it's all about intent. It's all about self-awareness. And if you have the self-awareness and you have the desire to be better at it, it's an easy thing to coach up when the person you're coaching realizes that they need the assistance and that they want the assistance.
Yeah, the desire is an important part there.
It is. I mean, you can lead the horse to water. I can tell you all day, and but you have to want to do it. But it can be done. It's not something, there's people out there who think, well, this is just the way it is, and it's got to be that way. And no, it's not. Your destiny is never cast in stone. You always have the ability. We've coached people who've been in business, 20 years and barely getting by, and all of a sudden we've been able to help them turn things around. It's really just about lining up the resources with the person who has the desire, and if you're willing to have that mindset of a lifelong learner, you can be successful at things.
Well said. So I've pulled out several things that I found interesting in the Pumpkin Plan for managed service providers. And one of the ones that I think everybody can relate to, that I'd love for you guys to talk about, is the hamster wheel. Who can't relate to being on the hamster wheel? If you're watching on video, the book, you got to pick up a copy. Tell me about the hamster wheel and how we all get caught on that.
Well, I'll start with this. Shawn likes to use there's a book called Built to Sell, right? And terrific book, not made for MSPs, made for general entrepreneurs and businesses. And they talk about, 7 things that to look at when you're looking at the value of a company and basically trying to view a company through the lenses of a buyer. And one of the things they talk about is the hub and spoke problem, right? And the hub and spoke problem is when everything revolves around the owner in a business. And I think, for a say 15 person MSP, and sometimes even bigger, this is the most natural problem in the world. Probably half to 3/4 of them have it, where, the owner is an engineer and, not thinking in terms of business. And basically they learn the bookkeeping, they learn the sales or force themselves to do it. They're already as strong on the engineering side, and they're not wired to delegate. They're not wired to build a business, frankly. They're wired to what needs to be done. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then they hire people to help them do it when they get too overwhelmed, and everything winds up revolving around the owner. So that's really at the core of the hamster wheel. The guy on the hamster wheel or girl on the hamster wheel is usually the owner, right? Mm-hmm. And it is, well, how do we get more successful? We have to work harder. And at the core of that is definitely the owner, and that's why they get burned out, and it's why their companies get stuck. Because when the answer is, I have to do more sales, I have to do more work, I have to sell more hours, I have to get to more invoices, it's usually the owner getting to those things. So we put together a bunch of qualities of the hamster wheel and how we identify it, in terms of you're trading time for money, mm-hmm. you are over-reliant on rockstar employees. The billing is always a mess because it's dependent on the timesheets. There's a lot of qualities that we identify, but ultimately it's the small, chaotic MSP that's just more. And I like to say that mature MSPs rely on rockstar processes and immature MSPs rely on rock stars. And rock stars eventually burn out, or they hold the company over a barrel, saying I need more money, and the owner's going, well, if this guy leaves, I'm totally screwed, because mm-hmm. everything runs through them. And basically we see this over and over again, where usually that person in the middle of everything is the owner. And if they're lucky, they find someone else to put in the middle of everything, and they just transfer the problem over to someone that isn't them. So one of the things we advocate for is thinking strategically in terms of your team from day one. Something that we've started working on in our consulting process is basically helping small MSPs say, what should your company look like when it's 10 people? Mm. And I say, at the heart of it is this: you should have a fully functioning service organization that the owner isn't involved in. You should have a service manager, you should have a dispatcher, you should have somebody doing account management, you should have high-level techs, you should have low-level techs, and all that's possible with 10 people if you plan it out. Mm-hmm. If all you have is an owner and 10 people working under the owner, you're going to get stuck, because at that point, when you try to mature things, it's like doing an organ transplant. It's saying, I know everything runs through me, meet your new boss. Now everything's going to run through him or her, mm-hmm. like that. It usually doesn't work. There's a strong chance that organ transplant will fail. So you want to think scalability from the very beginning if you want to get off the hamster wheel.
Yeah, I refer to it as the double-edged sword of entrepreneurship. Right, we get to a certain point where we can make a living because we are capable of doing every job of the business. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can. As Dave said, we
it's
can
pretty much required when you're one or two or three people, right?
You don't make it past startup. You don't make it past being an idea unless mm-hmm. you can do everything, and that's mm-hmm. what makes entrepreneurs different. But we get to about 800,000 in revenue, and all of a sudden, we still insist on doing everything. And mm-hmm. now what got us here isn't going to get us there. So now we've got to start delegating, but that goes so much against who we are, because we can do everything and we can do it great and nobody can do it as good as us. And you've got to now flip the script. You've got to flip the mindset. And with, and I have a very dominant personality. I like to have my hands in everything. I'm a squirrel chaser. I multitask, and so I would get involved in so many things. I drive my staff crazy. And finally we grew to that point, and we started growing through acquisition. And the acquisitions were in geographically different areas, which in kind of a way was the best thing that could have ever happened, because it made me have to go someplace else. And I came to a conclusion finally. I said, if I want these acquisitions to succeed, I can either have it succeed, or I can spend my time micromanaging my team, but I got to pick one. And because I was never going to succeed growing the company with multiple locations and that if I wanted everything to go through me. So I finally had to let go. And when I realized that they could do it, it was the most liberating feeling in the world. And now I was able to start handing off the hats and letting other people run stuff. And now I shifted from working in the business to working on the business. And I was able to get it to a point where I was basically 100% on the business. The only thing I did was I was still doing the sales management. I had salespeople, but I was managing the sales team. That was the only hat that I had left. And what owners need to understand is someday, hopefully, they're going to exit their company on positive terms. And one of the things that's going to impact the term on which they leave is how dependent is the business on them. And when I sold my company, the buyers asked me, they said, well, how long are you willing to hang around, after the sale of the company? And I said, till the check clears. And I thought, well, wait a second, we've bought MSPs, we need you. I said, no, you really don't. I said, the business isn't dependent on me anymore. I said, but you need to keep Tom happy. You need to keep Kevin happy. You need to keep Diana happy. So those are the people who run this company day to day. And they said, well, we'll need to check that out during due diligence. So, and they did, and they came back to me about a month later, and they said, okay, once the deal's done, we want you to meet with these 4 big clients, but other than that, you're free to go. And wow. So, that's the difference between having an earnout where you might be in a position where you're responsible for the company to perform at a certain level, but you no longer have the authority to run things the way you want to run them, which is a tough position to be in, and the ability to get walkaway money. And I knew my personality enough to know I would not do well staying in a company that I founded and watching other people make decisions on it. So I knew for me, that was the best way to exit. And because I had handed off those hats and we had processes, we had documented, repeatable processes, the key to this. And then we gave those processes to the right people in the right seats. That made all the difference in the world in just being able to decide how I got to choose how I exited. They didn't tell me how I was going to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're listening to Shawn, and you're not ready, if you're not thinking exit yet, you're thinking that's down the road quite a ways, or, I do run into people that think they're just going to run it forever. But the thing is, you need to do this for your team. You need to do this for your clients, because you're not perfect. You're not invincible. Things happen, our health happens, family needs us. There are things that are going to, even if you haven't exited the business, they're going to take you away from the business. And if you've set it up with you as a single point of failure, then that's going to be a brutal thing for your team and for your clients.
Absolutely. And Damien, one of the things that, when I'm working with somebody and I start bringing up exit planning and they go, whoa, I'm not planning on exiting for at least 10 years. I'm like, perfect. This is the time that we should be working on it then. Yep. And, there's a saying that I brought from law enforcement, which is, the day chooses you. We all think that someday in the future, we're going to pick a day that we're going to retire, and then we're going to drive that timeline. And one of the things being an entrepreneur is, more often than not, you don't pick the day picks you. Now, in my case, that was a positive event because we got an offer that we didn't expect. It was above the number that we had planned on. it was good timing for us, and we're like, wow, this is a great opportunity. We get to take advantage of it because the business was in a great. We were working a 10-year plan. We were only on year 6, but the company was in a great position to sell because we had it that way ahead of time. But other times we have people who come to us and say, I want to sell my business, and it's because there's a health crisis, there's a family crisis. And they think it's worth a certain amount, and we have to tell them that it's not. And I hate having that conversation. And my goal is to never have that conversation again with somebody. So yes, if you should still be exit planning, even if you have no intention to exit. You should always be keeping your MSP in the best possible condition to sell, so that when that day chooses you, you can still maximize the investment that you've made in this company, regardless if it's on your terms or somebody else's.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you keep your options open?
Absolutely.
Amazing company with amazing team that you've built.
Yeah. Always keep it in the best possible condition that it can be at a given time.
Just backing up to the hamster wheel for a minute, I told you like everything in our MSP was sort of like standard MSP experience, concentrated, when we were 3 or 4 years into our MSP, I had gone to breakout sessions at conferences on MSP plateaus, and kind of there's a few major plateaus, and one plateau is what I call 10 guys and an owner. Kind of the owner that's got an assistant or a bookkeeper and 8 techs, and basically that's how the MSP functions, but there's no middle management, there's no processes, and it's a common place to get stuck or to build a great lifestyle business where there's nothing wrong with that. But at one point, I thought we had long broken through that plateau, and it dawned on me when I went to another one of those sessions that, man, all we are is that 10 guys in an owner company with 2 owners. I had 21 people that were directly reporting to me.
Wow.
When it came time to do reviews, I had to ask other people, you think this person's doing a good job? Because they report to me, but I can barely remember their name, much less I don't know what they're doing all day. Like these people were not really being managed at all. To say they were undermanaged would be an exaggeration. They really weren't being managed at all, because I was also functioning as the COO and doing the invoicing and everything else. And I was commuting an hour and 45 minutes each way into New York City. And I was just, 14, 16-hour days. When it came to Hamster Wheel, man, I was rocking that thing harder than anyone has ever rocked it. So when it comes to, speaking from experience and living the burnout, those chapters were, that chapter was not hard to write, because it was not based on years of research and interviews. It was what I lived. So
that's what I love about both of you, running your own MSPs, screwing it up yourself, just like me. I was an MSP. You don't have to go out to pull
sounds
the
better
crowd.
when we say it than when someone else says it.
That's right.
Yeah, okay,
right.
I guess we did.
Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was just me screwing up my MSP.
Well, but it's think about it. And this is a talk that Dave and I do. We start out with, that we all get into this business the same way. We go to Harvard Business School, we get a degree, we analyze businesses to get into, we choose an MSP. No, we get into being an MSP because we got fired, we got laid off, we had a boss who was a jerk who we decided I can do this better and start my own company. But we go into it with typically very little business experience, if any at all. We go in there because there's something we can do to offer somebody else that we know has value. But all that stuff around it, I mean, thank God we don't know about it, because if we did, we'd probably run away and never try. But we don't know any better, so we jump into this with both feet, and all of a sudden we're looking around and going, wow, there's all this other stuff I got to learn. I got to learn accounting, I got to learn business, I got to learn HR, I got to learn, how to hire people.
You're learning how to swim in 20 feet of water.
Yeah, I mean, and then we just figure it out.
Yeah.
And of course everybody else thinks it's easy, and it only takes 20 years to be an overnight success, but but it's like the duck in the water, man. Everybody sees us floating there, but nobody sees the feet going like this.
That's right. I remember when my ideal client profile was anybody's check that cleared.
AFAB. I can install your server. Would you like me to paint your office for you while I'm at it?
That's right. I can sweep the floor too, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
I wanted to talk about what I think is important too in the book. You talk about differentiation versus building a commodity. And I think that's another trap that I fell into and a lot of us fall into. So what does that mean to you?
Shawn's got his can.
See this?
Liquid death. All right. Tell me about this.
What is this?
This is a can.
It's a can.
Yeah.
It is a can of water.
Okay.
Not fortified water. It's not vitamin water. It's water.
All right.
Okay. This company started in 2017. They decided we're going to put water in a can. We're going to give it a fancy label. They charge 3 times the price of regular water. The company 2 months ago was valued at $2.4 billion. And yet I have MSPs who have all this stuff they do, and they sit there and they tell me, I can't differentiate. I do the same thing as everybody else. I'm like, if these guys can put water in a can and sell it for 3 times as much, you can differentiate.
Mm-hmm. Water is still water at the end of the day, right?
End of the day. But what did they do? What did they do by putting in a can? Okay, They changed the customer experience, but it's so simple. And, people will tell you, okay, they put it in a can because it's more recyclable. It's going to help the environment. That attracts a certain buyer. Absolutely. The bigger differentiator is actually they've found that it's that when you're at the neighborhood barbecue and you don't want to drink, when you're holding a bottle of Poland Springs, everybody goes, oh, you're not drinking? Oh, have a beer. And what's this look like? A craft beer can. So they changed the experience.
Colt 45.
Yeah, but it's still water. Okay, so yes, they're delivering the same thing the Poland Springs is, but they're just changing it. And I think it's because so many of us come from an engineering background, is we overthink this. We miss the target. Because differentiation can be such a simple thing. It can be change the package. When Dave and I give our talk, I wear a suit and a tie, and there's people there I've known for years that have never seen me in a suit and tie. But I explain to the audience that when I had my MSP, my target clients were law firms. And one day I had a lawyer look at me and he said, you sell to lawyers, right? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, why do you look like one of your techs? I said, what do you mean? He goes, you come in here and I can't tell the difference from one of your techs because you come in here in a logo shirt and Dockers and that. He goes, that's not who your audience is. And after that, I started wearing a suit and tie because I went in there looking like the lawyer. I was the only MSP that they interviewed that came in looking like them. So there was an immediate emotional connection. They perceived me at a higher level than the other people who were coming in because they felt that I was more on their level. I also knew to have boardroom conversations with them, not server room conversations. We talked about business results, not speeds and feeds. But that caused our per seat price to go up dramatically, and our deal size went up dramatically, and it was just as simple as that. Yesterday I ordered some bars for the back of my truck for putting bicycles on. And I found this company, and it's a US-based small company that makes these racks that I really liked. I opened up the box, and as I opened the lid, there was a handwritten note. It said, thanks, Shawn, for ordering from us. We really appreciate it. Let us know if there's anything we can do. Somebody took the time to write that with a Sharpie on the inside of the box. I was like, wow, that's awesome customer service. I really like these guys. I can't wait to buy from them again.
That's awesome.
A simple thing of just taking the time to write that personal note on the inside of a box lid. It's a differentiator. I've never seen anybody else do it. Did it change their product? No. It was just about mindset, engaging with the customer, making a connection. There's so many ways to differentiate that are simple, and they don't even cost anything. We use Citizen M Hotel Chain as a. If you look on YouTube, Citizen M Blue Ocean Strategy. There's a video there that explains why they are a blue ocean strategy. But they took all the things in the hotel industry that people wanted from 3-star hotels, 4-star hotels, 5, put them together at a decent price. It just changed the experience. They still give you a bed to sleep in. So people need to stop overthinking their differentiation, and they need to stop confusing different with better. Because oftentimes when I ask, what's your differentiator? Well, we do this better than our competitor. We have better technology. Our people speak English, yada, yada, yada. There was actually a study that showed when you go into a prospect, and this is not unique to IT, but if you go into a prospect and you present to them saying, I'm better than this, I'm better than my competitor at that, the more you compare yourself to your competitor, the more you look like them. You're not differentiating, you're actually making it worse. So you need to go in and create a different experience. And what I tell people is when you're presenting to a prospect, if they're agreeing with you, if you're saying, yeah, you need this firewall, you need monitoring, blah, 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 and they're going, yeah, absolutely, I do need that. You think you're closing the deal. The reality is what you're doing is you're confirming that you're not telling the prospect anything that they don't already know. And you're walking out the door going, yeah, I closed the deal. And they're going, oh, well, they said the same thing the other 4 people did, so therefore I can safely pick the low bidder.
Mm-hmm. They're all the same.
You're not different. You're not winning the deal when they're agreeing with you. You're winning the deal when they cock their head and they go, huh, nobody's ever said that to me before. Nobody's ever presented this to me this way before. Nobody's created this experience before. That's when you're winning the deal. So you've got to figure those things out. And that's one of the things that we work through with folks. And it's an interesting process.
So Shawn, you may have already covered it, but Shawn, what was your differentiator? Because I feel like this is one I struggle with, depending on tense.
Yeah.
And as an MSP, I struggled with, and I feel like it's the norm. It's not the exception. So
yeah.
What was your words? And I want to allow you to share yours too. Put you guys both on the hot seat.
Ours was really understanding law firms, and because of my police background, and I came in, I used to teach computer forensics at the police academy. Even the clients that weren't lawyers that we had were usually medical and financial services. So we focused on those people who needed security compliance. And we could walk in the door and start that conversation knowing what their biggest concern and liability was. So we understood the client. We understood what their fear was. And the big mistake that a lot of people make when they sell is they talk about what they know and what they can offer, because that's what we're comfortable with naturally. But instead, you want to walk in the door talking about what your client wants, or what's their fear, what keeps them up at night. And again, walking in a suit and tie, because that's who our client base was, being able to talk their language and talk about it from where we could bring it in from their direction. So it was a different experience in the conversation when they worked with us.
Dave, tell me about you. Let me put you on the hot seat. What was your differentiation?
When I think about turning points for my MSP, there's 3 that come to mind. One was the transition to managed services, and I think a lot of MSPs from my era can probably say the same thing. The second one was when we had a consultant come in and basically confront my partner and I, and basically say, if you guys don't define your lanes and your roles well, I'm going to wind up mediating a divorce between you two, and basically one of you needs to have operations and one of you needs to have sales, and we both like doing both. And it was the same thing, owner can do everything. And that was, at the time, we were like, he's crazy, blah, blah, blah. And he turned out to be 100% right. But the third thing was when we began to self-identify as an MSP, that focused on hedge funds and private equities. And basically, that vertical definition put us in a situation where instead of competing against 150 MSPs in New York City, all of a sudden we're competing against 5. And then we went to the power brokers in that world, who are the prime brokerages at the large investment banks, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, companies like that. They're the ones that launched the hedge funds. And we went to them, wound up getting meetings with them, and we said, all of our competitors in this space are going after bigger fish, right? We are a small, service-intensive MSP, at least comparatively small versus the $100 million MSP, and we are the perfect fit for that 5-person MSP that's launching with $200 million under management, which sounds like a lot to us, normal human beings, but it's not a lot in the hedge fund world. And basically, we defined a niche within a niche, and then the business just started coming to us instead of us having to chase it. People are throwing us clients where we're not even in competitive situations sometimes. And these guys all talk to each other, and that's what really led to viral sales for us. So for us, definitely basically identifying a lane for ourselves, identifying a lane for the world, and then going for that niche within a niche. We just found a place where it was cleared out. It was blue ocean, in terms of we could go into these situations and say, sure, you could sign with the big name. You'll be their 200th most important client. You'll be our third. Which situation do you want to be in? Because we're going to do everything we can to make you happy. And then you get to a point where you've achieved a certain amount of success and you don't have to go to market saying, we're the scrappy little guy that's going to treat you like the king. We can go to market and say, we've got all the experience, we've got all the compliance things lined up. We do this in our sleep, and it's a different kind of sell. But basically finding that blue ocean where not everybody's chasing the same thing, and you've committed to something. It was a major turning point in our business because we already had those kinds of clients, and we were terrified to go to market like that because we felt like we'd lose opportunities in other places. It turned out that we didn't lose any of those other opportunities. We just gained a lot more opportunity within the vertical that we identified and focused on.
Yes.
There's a
I
guy.
can very much relate to that, though, right? And we feel like if we say to the world, this is what we do, this is our niche, this is what we're for, that we're just going to miss out on the rest of the world. And I don't know where we get that from, but I know I have that fear, and I go, why?
You know what, Damien?
We're
MSP mindset, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is psychology.
Huge.
That when someone projects that I know who I am, I'm comfortable with who I am, if you want to get with me, you're going to get with me. I'm not going to try and become what you want me to be. There's something that's very attractive about that. People are drawn to that, so that even if you're a law firm or a PR firm and we say we're a financial services MSP firm, they'll go, it's not a turnoff to them. We can go, oh, you have demanding users with 3 houses and spend the summer in the Hamptons and need all your technology to work from everywhere, and you have important people that are a pain in the butt. Well, we deal with hedge fund managers.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, I tried all the firms that specialize in law firms and PR, but it seems like you're what we need. And we go, well, here's how we do things, and here's how we price them, and we're not changing for you. You want to jump on board? It's a totally different mindset than when someone feels like you're begging them for the sale, they go, well, why should I use you? It's kind of the playing hard to get. Confidence draws people.
You don't have a strategy until you can say no.
I love that.
And that comes from Michael Porter from Harvard Business School, who I am a big fan of, and I teach a lot of his methodologies. But he is very key on strategy, and you have to know what you don't do and what you're going to say no to. If you don't know what that is, or there isn't anything, then you really don't have a strategy. It's just hit and hope.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this kind of is a perfect segue to a part I love to talk about, which is you guys talk about your unique offering or your giant pumpkin seed. And I love to talk about people and understanding, what makes you unique. So tell me more about that from your perspective. What is this giant pumpkin seed and why is it so important?
I'll start the because I think it's a continuation of what we were just talking about. You have to know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is it that you bring to the world? What is it that you bring to the marketplace? If you start out by trying to figure out what people want and turning into that thing, it doesn't work as well. There has to be some self-awareness, some self-reflection of where do we fit in this business landscape? What do we have to offer? What is it that is inherent to us, our core values, our corporate personality that we can leverage and take to the world? I think that's where it starts. And maybe I'll pass the baton to Shawn there, because the sweet spot is his sweet spot. So
Yeah. One of the things that I think that you really need, everybody needs to bring to the table, and I think Dave and I do, is that you really need to come at things from a place of curiosity. If you ever watched Ted Lasso, I love the dart scene. If you Google Ted Lasso dart scene, it's on YouTube, but where he goes into this battle with this guy, but he gives a speech and it's about, be curious, not judgmental. And there's a lot of judgmental business owners out there. I was one of them. I think that's one thing that if you want to have that seed that grows, you better be coming at things from a standpoint of curiosity and lifelong learning. And I think that's universal for everybody's pumpkin seed. We talk about the sweet spot in the book, and it's really the combination of three things. It's the combination of knowing who your target audience is. So having your customer avatar dialed in. Another example I use in the talk is Stanley Cups. Company that's been around 30 years. 75 million in sales, very, very solid company, was selling to construction workers and sold coolers and thermoses, things like that, to the construction industry. And then one day, a mommy blogger got a hold of one of the bugs, did her little video, said, "Oh my God, this thing's the greatest thing ever." It went on to a Peloton page, and they realized that their audience, their target audience, wasn't construction workers; it was stay-at-home moms. And mompreneurs. Their sale, they've been around 30 years, 75 million. In 3 years, they've gone from 75 million in sales to 765 million, actually. 10x, knowing who your client base is. So that's one part of one circle of the sweet spot. The other is having your processes. Okay, the owner not doing everything, having documented, repeatable process that everybody follows, so the client experience is the same no matter who gets that person. You got to have that dialed in. And finally, your unique offering. What is the thing that you do uniquely well? And I already touched on that. But what are the things you're going to say no to? Because they're things you're not, they're not what you're best at. They are not your core competency. And what are the things you're going to say yes to? When you find the intersection of all those things, that is your sweet spot. That is where you're going to grow.
How do, let me go back to your example. So Shawn, from what I gathered, your MSP was focused on attorneys. Dave, yours was hedge funds. There was more to it than that, obviously, but size and psychographics and demographics. But just for a high level, how did you know when to say no? Because like Dave's example was like, well, they really wanted somebody that was used to dealing with high demanding people. So there were some people outside of that maybe it made sense to say yes to. And that's one thing. It's like, where is that line? Do they have to be an attorney in your world, Shawn, or do they align in some other way?
No, and I explain this to people. You have an A-list client avatar. That's who you're going to spend money to pursue. That's who you're going to spend your time and energy pursuing. Now, if somebody comes up on the fringe here and they still meet the qualities of an A-list client, but maybe they're not in your vertical, but they want to do business with you, that's fine. You don't have to walk away there. It's more, it's not about the vertical that they're in. It was about, are they going to follow our processes, or are we one of the things, I follow the MSP forum in Reddit, and I see people posting almost every week. Well, the client's asking me to do this. How do I do that? How do I do this? Or they want me to, one of them a couple of weeks ago was, well, the client doesn't want to use my software for this in my stack. So I got to get this other piece of software so I can get this client. I'm screaming at my phone going, no, stop the madness. The client takes your stack. So many MSPs let the tail wag the dog. You are the expert. You go in there and you say, this is how we manage. If, as Dave said, if you want to get on board with us, that's great. We'd love to have you. If you want to micromanage the process or you want to interject with other things, no, you go away.
Yeah, one of the best ways somebody said it to me was, they get to choose if they hire me as a mechanic. They don't get to tell me what brand of tools I have in my toolbox.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. I mean, but you go in confident, know what you're best at. One of the things when we changed this mindset in our company was I had a law firm. Their server crashed. The engineer came back, told me there's a data loss and we don't have a backup. I said, oh my God, what's going on? He said the tape. He said the tape was in the drive and it was broken. It was spinning and nobody's changed it in 6 months. So I got called in.
You're the first person it's ever happened to. Nobody's ever had that.
Right,
Shawn.
Absolutely. So, of course, being a law firm, I got called into a partners meeting and they're all at the table. And, the one who hired me is leaning over the table going, why did we have a data loss? We pay you so much money. And I knew what was coming. I deal with lawyers. So I pulled out a copy of the contract. I said, well, because right here where it says backup services, you crossed it out and said that cost too much money and that you would do it yourself. And he looks at the table and pauses and looks at me, looks at the table, looks up again. He goes, you should have insisted. And I wanted to punch him in the nose, but he was absolutely right. I was the expert in IT. He was not. He was not qualified to make that decision. I should have said, no, you have to have our backup services along with all this other stuff for us to manage this properly and protect you. But we didn't. And that would be like the lawyer saying to me, which one of these contracts would you like, without explaining the differences and what's happening? And it would be malpractice. So me letting the client make those decisions is malpractice on my part. So after that, I went back to my team. I said, you know what? He's absolutely right. At that point, we began offering one level of service. This is what you get. If you don't want that, then we're not your company. Go find somebody else. There's plenty of other people out there. You know what? But we can take care of you really well as long as you let us do what we do well.
They're going to blame you if you don't have backups.
Of course.
They're going to blame you if you don't have a commercially reasonable cybersecurity stack.
Absolutely.
Why would you let them cross off the essential elements? When you build a house, you don't cross off which of the utilities you'd like to pay for.
I don't tell the contractor, I want you to use this brand of 2x6, not yours. No, you don't get to do that. But so after that it was very clear, and at that point it was you get our whole stack. I don't care that you paid for 2 years of this crappy antivirus that you have there, and you know what? So if it really came down to it, I'd give them a credit for it and just say, here, I'll pay you back. We work it into the price. It's fine. You know what? They feel better. We feel better. Whatever it takes to, always protect the recurring revenue. So, we would get them on board. But after that, it was, you know what? We're the experts here, and you got to come in like the expert.
I love that.
Yeah. I would just echo everything that Shawn said. Talk about knowing yourself, right? When you have a really well-defined approach to service, you have a well-defined stack and a well-defined service offering, you don't have to say no to a whole lot of things, because when you're not going to compromise from that, people will say no to you. It sorts itself out. There's not a whole lot of people you need to turn away when you go to market and say, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what it costs. We're not going to learn your proprietary software. We're not going to discount our prices. We're not going to support your weird back end technology. If you hire us, this is what you get, and we know it'll work great. Do you want it? But I think the reason so many MSPs don't do that is they're going, well, we'll lose sales that way.
Mm-hmm.
And our response is always, absolutely, you will. And you'll lose the ones you should lose. You'll lose the ones that are going to be difficult relationships that will probably eventually go away anyway, that it's going to be hard to make money on. You have to have confidence that you don't need to sell every opportunity. You need to sell the right opportunities to build a great business.
So if I'm listening to you and I realize you're talking about me, you're talking about my business, it sounds like I need to get out of my own way. It sounds like the space between my ears is what's holding me back. So Dave, what would you say that I need to be asking myself?
There's two things, right? There's knowing who you are, both personally and corporately, right? The Shawn and I did a paid marketing study of our company, of Encore, basically, and I think the most valuable thing it provided, this was maybe 6 months ago, the most valuable thing it provided was us learning who we are as a company. Like, we are educators. We're both kind of no BS personalities. We have very different personalities, but we have that in common. Very down to earth, no BS. What you see is what you get. We're going to tell you how it is, and that's going to be appealing to some people and not others, and that's okay. We're not going to try and change who we are.
I think one of the as far as asking yourself a question, what am I doing to get better? What am I doing to validate what I'm doing? Who do I have to bounce things off of? Am I asking the right questions? Am I subjecting myself to the critics there, or am I just asking the people that I know will agree with me? And to that point, the thing that we tell every MSP we talk to who comes and asks us for help, whether they choose to go with us or not, is I don't care if you join our peer group, but join a peer group. And I don't care if you hire me as a coach, but get a freaking coach. Coaching and being in a peer group are the two single best investments I ever made in myself and my company. And it helped me way beyond my business. It's helped me in every aspect of my life. And that's where, that's how I built a relationship with Dave. The people who were in my peer group 15 years ago, I still talk to almost on a daily basis, even though I'm not an MSP anymore. Having a group of people that you trust to be candid with you, ask you hard questions, and tell you hard truths is invaluable.
Tell you when you're full of crap.
Absolutely.
Most people can't tell the owner that.
And as Dave said, we would love to help anybody listening to this as their coach or have them join one of our peer groups. But they don't have to join ours. Having a coach is a very personal experience. You've got to find that you've got the right person in front of you. And there's some fantastic coaches out there in our industry. We have some great peers. There are some bad ones too. I mean, you should do your research on people and, make sure you know who you're getting advice from. But you do your research, do your due diligence on the person or the peer group company. Interview people. Don't just take things at face value. And find the person that you can connect with, and find the person that you're going to be comfortable with, but get in that group and get that feedback, because it's going to help you grow, and you're going to grow faster, not just your business growth, but your personal growth, which they're going to go hand in hand, because one doesn't go without the other. So at least not
true.
Well.
All right, Damien. It came back. I'm ready for take two if you want.
What's the genius answer, Dave? Tell us.
All right. Well, what I was saying is you have to know who you are, both personally and corporately, right? You got to figure out what you're offering to the world is, and what your approach is, what that unique thing that you're bringing is. But the second part of it is just confidence, right? Everything is about a leap of faith, right? I think a lot of people continue to tell people what they want to hear and just sell anything to anyone because they're scared that if what they really bring to the market is what they're really good at, and it reflects their corporate identity. Like, there'll be some people that don't want that. You think about trying to make a new friend or trying to get a girlfriend or boyfriend or a spouse. It's the whole, do I just be myself, or do I try and be cool and try and be the kind of person that they're going to want to be attracted to? It's like, if you get into a relationship based on something that isn't really you, it's going to break down sooner or later. It's only going to work for a little while. And the same thing is true in business. You have to know your core values. You have to know what you bring to the world. And then you have to bring that. And it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But for the people where there's a match, it should be a wonderful long-term relationship that isn't transactional and has real value for everybody involved.
I love that, Dave. Thank you for sharing that. I'm reading a book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap. So you almost use those words, and it's been very insightful. As somebody that has multiple, more than one coach and in a peer group, don't wait. If you're wondering, don't wait. Guys, I could spend all afternoon, but I know you don't have that kind of time talking to you. So thank you for this. Would you tell folks that are interested, Shawn and Dave, how to get connected with your company, connected with you if they'd like to learn more?
Absolutely. Shawn or Dave at encorestrategic.io.
Okay.
And they can reach out to us directly. We're pretty active on LinkedIn and other social media, so they can get a hold of us there as well. But we are always open to talking and giving people direction. We talk about core values a lot, and one of our top core values is we help first. So so please feel free to reach out at any time.
Yeah, I tell people, sure, we'd like to make money, but the reason we want to doing this is because we love doing it, and we'd be doing it for free even if it wasn't our business. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
get off on helping,
and we all need this help. So if you're listening and you don't take action on the offer Dave and Shawn just made you, that's your fault. So, guys, thank you for this gift today, and it's been just a blessing to get to learn from both of you.